Hey guys, me again. Getting ready to head home. And I've been thinking about a bunch of different topics. And I started thinking to myself, hey, maybe I should branch off of just talking about motorcycles all the time. And in a recent conversation that I had with a friend of mine, we started discussing books. So I think I'm going to share that with you guys. Today's topic is going to be books that I've read and enjoyed. Now, I don't know how many of you, my subs, can tell, but I like to read. I like to read a lot. Ever since I was a kid, I've always liked to read, to the point that I would read in the dark because my mom had said to go to sleep, and I wanted to keep up reading, so I would just stay awake and read literally in the dark with a book like up to my nose. So I've read quite a few books. I have like a small personal library in my room now, and I have quite a few favorites, so I'll try and narrow it down. I'll only talk about a few books that I've really enjoyed. But top of the list, hands down, as long as I have been able to remember, one of my favorite books was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury is an awesome sci-fi writer, and he actually has a few of his books on my favorite list because he's a brilliant sci-fi writer. It's amazing stuff. So, Fahrenheit 451, for those of you who haven't read the book, is a novel about censorship in media and how the government will try to control the way people live and act by choosing which media they're allowed to have and which they're not. And so basically in the book, books become outlawed. So does pretty much all things in print. Newspapers, Bibles, pretty much any novel you've ever read, all the Shakespearean plays, all that kind of thing. They touch on a few things that have specifically been banned. But it basically amounts to everything that's printed media. They get rid of it. They got rid of it. And it's about the fight to get that stuff back. It's a really good book. If you guys haven't read that book, go down to your library right now and get Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Anyway, I'm gushing a little bit, but I really like that book. It's awesome. It's a brilliant book. Anyway, that's one. Number two is another one by Ray Bradbury. It's called The Illustrated Man. And it's also a sci-fi book about a guy that's tattooed. His entire torso is covered in tattoos. And the main character of the book comes upon this tattooed man while traveling along a road. And so they fall asleep by a campfire together. But the main character is watching the man's tattoos, and as he lays there, the illustrated man's tattoos come to life, and they move on his skin, and it tells the story of each tattoo. And it's really intense. I mean, it's one of my favorite books because it goes into such depth about tattoos, and each story is a different sci-fi thing, but they're so awesome. So number two is Ray Bradbury's The Illustrated Man. Number three would have to be Isaac Asimov's I, Robot. Now, for those of you who have seen and enjoyed the Will Smith movie, that is not the whole story. The I, Robot that became popular in theaters is literally one out of like 20 short stories that are in the book I, Robot. But they're all equally good. And it's a major in-depth exploration of what we are doing with technology and how it might get out of hand. Sorry about the jitteriness, guys. This stretch of freeway sucks, and they're redoing all of it. So, anyway, it's a really cool look a bunch of different, very scientific angles at what our technology could eventually end up doing to us. It reminds me of The Matrix. I think The Matrix pulled very heavily on its ideas from iRobot. Anyway, that's a great book too. Let's see. What else was a really good book? Oh, number 4 has to be Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. That is a brilliant novel. And essentially the storyline for that one is that people have discovered that their emotions cause them pain, cause them discomfort. So they start manufacturing en masse this drug Soma that basically numbs them to their feelings and allows them to lead deadpan lives that never really get out of hand or chaotic or anything like that. And if you guys are looking for a short, movie interpretation of the novel, there's a really good movie called Equilibrium. I keep shifting because I keep forgetting that I'm already in 6th gear. Anyway, the movie Equilibrium, starring Christian Bale, has a lot of themes that are very similar to Aldous Huxley's novel, Brave New World. But it presents them, obviously, in a different media format that's a little easier to digest. But they're both really good. So, book number 4 is Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Let's see, what else? What else is a really good book that jumped off the shelf at me? Oh, number 5 would be by Max Brooks, The Zombie Survival Guide, and in tandem, World War Z. For those of you who aren't aware, I'm a huge zombie fan. I have this fascination with zombies. I think they're the most terrifying of all the movie monsters. Mostly because they are the ones that are most likely, I think. Anyway, we won't get into that. I'll talk about that in another motovlog. Anyway, The Zombie Survival Guide and World War Z are interesting because they're written from the point of view of somebody who takes zombies seriously. Max Brooks firmly believes in this whole zombie phenomenon, and his books reflect that. The Zombie Survival Guide is a logical, methodical manual on how to survive in the case of a zombie apocalypse. I really like that. And World War Z, which they are now making a movie on, is basically a collection of interviews and stories post-apocalypse, after the zombies have risen. And it basically is it's taken from the point of view of a journalist who is going around interviewing different people who survived and basically asking them how they survived and what their role in the zombie rising was. It's very cool. It's a really interesting read. I mean, I am a huge fan of Max Brooks' work, and from what I understand, he's got a 3rd book that's out now that's a collection of zombie encounters. So I am quite excited to research that and maybe possibly pick that book up as well. Another one that I've always loved, and if you haven't read them, you definitely should, is The Chronicles of Narnia. Now, I'm going to list that as one book, but really, it's a set of books. We all know that. There's 9 of them. And they're all brilliant. Sorry, people are talking. The Chronicles of Narnia are amazing because they're written in such a way that as a kid, I could read them and understand them and take something from them. But when I was reading them as a child, it was more for the fantasy of it, for the talking animals and the swish, swish, clang, clang of swords and shields and all of that. and all the, obviously, like, mythological creatures like centaurs and minotaurs and satyrs and fauns and, you know, talking critters. All that stuff was awesome to me as a kid. But then when I've gone back and reread them as a teenager and again as an adult, there's still something to be pulled from them, even as a grown man. I'm pulling different themes out of those books now that I didn't catch on to before. And, interesting little side note for those of you who are not familiar with it. My understanding is that C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit, and Ray Bradbury, who wrote the Martian Chronicles, are all friends. Or were all friends, I should say. And at some point, we're sitting at a table together deciding that they should each write an allegory for the story of Jesus. And so C.S. Lewis wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings, and Ray Bradbury wrote the Martian Chronicles. So if you go back and read the books, or even watch the movies, bearing in mind that there is an analogy for the story of Jesus Christ in those movies or novels, you will pull something completely different from those that you never saw before. Yeah, that's just a collection of some books that, if you haven't read them, I would highly recommend them. And if you have read them, I would love to discuss them with you guys in the comments, or as a video response, or private message, whatever. I mean, as motovloggers, we all love bikes, and that's obvious by the fact that we choose to motovlog. But I think it is important for motovloggers and their subs to have an understanding of each other. I think you guys will get more out of my motovlogs if you see where I'm coming from. And so I think it's important that you guys get to see something of me other than my bike. That's why I like to share my adventures with the club and my history, my things that I enjoy, like books and tattoos and that kind of thing. I want you guys to have what's the word? Circumspect? An all-around view of who I am and what I'm about. So that you can decide for yourselves if I'm worth watching and subscribing and meeting and riding with and all of that. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling. I get on the subject of books and I get like super excited. I'm sure there's a word for that, like bibliophile or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I'll see you guys on the next one.